On today's video, I'm going to show you how I make sourdough. You start off with your starter, which I have this right here. It was sitting out overnight. It's very bubbly. I don't know if you can see it. It's very nice. It smells very yeasty. It's I can tell it's growing. It has a nice texture. So to start off, I will take my starter and set aside. I will first put in 1.5 cups of warm water. I don't take the temperature of the water. Some people do. I just make sure that it's pretty warm. It shouldn't be steaming hot, but it should be pretty warm. So I put this in here. And here again, some people may like to use a wooden bowl or a glass bowl. I do not have one that's big enough for this yet. I want to get one. But I find that this stainless steel bowl works perfectly for now. So what I do next is I just take my starter in the jar that's been sitting out overnight. And I just take it and put it into the water. It will be pretty sticky, but that's not the way it's supposed to be. It can have the consistency shouldn't be super thick. It should be about the consistency of pancake batter. It should be very light and very bubbly and poofy. The next thing you want to do is add in 4 cups of all-purpose premium white flour. Now, some people might use whole grain or wheat flour or spelt. There's a lot of different options, but I like to use the premium white flour from Montana Wheat. It seems to work out very well for us, and I love the texture, so I tend to use this a lot. So you just measure out 4 cups and put it into your water with the starter. And then you want to add 1.5 teaspoons of sea salt. Then you take a spoon, I like to use my wooden spoon, and you just stir it all together. It will be very sticky, and it should all come together in a good cohesive dough. Once it's an actual dough, you can take your hands and just kind of squeeze it together. Make sure it's pretty mixed in. It's okay if it looks a little rough. That will get evened out. You just want to make sure the flour is mixed in and that you have a nice chunk of dough. So that's how it's supposed to look. And then you cover it with a towel and you let the dough rest for 30 minutes. I like to use a damp towel to cover it because extra moisture is good for the dough that's resting in the bowl. So I just take a damp towel, I make it a little bit damp with water, and I just set it over my bowl. And now we're going to let it rest for 30 minutes. It has been 30 minutes and my bowl of sourdough is ready for its first stretching and folding session. Basically what this means is that I'm going to take a floured board, just like this, lightly flour it, and then remove your sourdough onto the flour. It's still quite sticky, so I like to use a little flat scraper to remove it from the bowl and onto the floured surface. So you just set it on the flour. I like to do one side, then the other side, and then what you want to do is just grab each side, just like this. Stretch and fold it into the middle. Do the next one, stretch, fold into the middle. Next one, stretch, fold into the middle. And this side you want to stretch and as much as you can without tearing it and fold into the middle. Then you want to take your corners and stretch and fold into the middle. Take this corner, stretch, and fold into the middle. Stretch, fold into the middle, and last, this corner. Do this for about 15 seconds. Pinch everything together, make sure all your seams are sealed. Roll it over, form it into a nice round ball. You can see how smooth and elastic that looks. At this point, it should not be feeling sticky. You should not be getting dough on your hands. Just want to make sure it's nice and tight. You want to get a clean bowl. I'm going to use this stainless steel bowl. I'm going to line it with a clean dish towel. And I'm just going to dust the inside very generously with flour. Now the reason you want to do this is to prevent sticking. So don't put too much on it, but just coat it, give it a nice coating to prevent the dough from sticking. Just like that. Then you just take your dough and set it on the towel, just like that. You cover it back up with your damp towel that you had before, just like that, and you put it in a warm place. It is almost exactly 6 hours since I've last stretched the sourdough, and so we're going to do that again. It has been resting inside this bowl in the towel for the last 6 hours. It's looking very light and puffy. As you can see, I can poke it with my finger and it springs back. That means it's ready to stretch. So as we did before, I'm going to remove this dough from the towel. Here is my dough, and I'm going to give it another stretching for 15 seconds. Again, you pull and take it into the middle. Take the next, into the middle. Take the next one, into the middle. This one, stretch, into the middle. Take the corners, into the middle. This side, and this side, and on this side. Press and seal. Your dough should be popping. You should hear little popping noises from the yeast. It doesn't have yeast, but the natural fermentation of the starter should be making your loaf nice and popping, kind of like a yeast dough would. So as you can see, everything is sealed on the top. You flip it over and you let it sit on your floured board for about 10 minutes. A nice round loaf. So I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes and then I'm going to come back. So it's been 10 minutes, and there's one thing that I do want to mention. I did put a towel in for my bread to let it rise the first time. I had showed you how to do a floured towel. I actually realized later that the floured towel for the first time around is actually unnecessary. You do want to cover the dough with a damp towel, like I had said, but no need to put in a towel for the first round of rising. So what you want to do now is carefully lift your loaf. It might be sticking a little. This one is sticking just slightly. And carefully place it into your prepared floured bowl. You want to dust it pretty heavily with flour or it will stick. Then just carefully lay it in there like that. And let it rise for 30 minutes to 1 hour. I am back. It has been 40 minutes and the sourdough is ready to be removed from the bowl. So I'm going to cover it with parchment paper and flip it out onto a board, a floured board. And then I'm going to slash it with a knife, a very sharp paring knife. And then I'm going to set it in the Dutch oven and we're going to bake it. So first thing I do is just remove a piece of parchment paper that is big enough to cover this bowl. It's about this size, like this. And I just flip the bowl and flip the bread onto that. So here I have the bread resting on my floured board. I actually realized later I wouldn't have had to put flour on the board because there's flour inside the towel and it covered my bread. So we're just going to take this sharp knife and just slash the middle. This is so that the bread can expand and grow without bursting. And you want to hold your knife at an angle as you're doing this. I am definitely not perfect at this yet. I'm still learning. Some people use an actual loom to do this. I don't have that. So I've been just using a sharp knife. I am also doing the sides very gently, very carefully, just lightly, making some slashes in this. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. I am just using a knife right now, trying to make them deep enough, but not too deep. All right, there we have it. I have my Dutch oven right here. And so I'm just going to grab the sourdough and the parchment paper and set it into the Dutch oven. Just like that. I have the oven preheated to 450. So we're just going to go ahead and put the lid on that Dutch oven. Just like that. And we're going to set it in the stove. And we're going to let that bake now for 30 minutes. And after the 30 minutes is up, and then we will take the lid off and put it back in and let it toast for another, or bake for another 20 minutes. And baking without the lid will make it, give it a nice golden crispy crust on the top. Here is the finished product. I just took it out of the oven.